Information security is one of the most important topics in technology today. Is your data secure? Bring Your Own Security Radio is here to help keep you up to date on the latest trends, software, and apps to make sure that your data stays secure. Bring Your Own Security Radio is about to begin. Here are your experts, Dave and Jason.
That's right, I'm Dave.
I'm Jason.
And this is Bring Your Own Security Radio for Thursday, May 17th. Jason,
Yes.
it's almost like our first episode all over again. We've been off the air for 3 weeks. It's been crazy, but I appreciate everybody.
Hiatus.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate everybody being supportive and waiting for us to come back. And it's been all my fault with this knee and having
partially my fault too.
Having some issues, but I appreciate everybody's support, and the text and tweets and stuff that we've been getting has been pretty nice. So thanks again to everybody.
Yep.
And I want to say a quick shout out to the interface events. I did a presentation out there yesterday, and it was very well received. They had 75 chairs, and every chair was full, and we had about 14 or 15 standing up. So great event, great turnout. It was awesome. So thank you again.
Full chair, standing room only is pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. And that topic is a topic that we'll talk about on some later episode. But I basically presented on the anatomy of a hack is what it was called, and the premise was this is how a black hat thinks, and from A to Z, this is how we do it. And I say we because that's where I started. I started doing phone phreaking and other things in the 90s, and didn't get myself in trouble, and always reached out to people when I did do something across the line to let them know I did it. So I always stayed above board.
I'm figuring that we is not a mouse in your pocket or anything. So
that's right. That's right. So anyway, again, thanks to Interface for having me out there at their Cincinnati event yesterday, and one other event, Jason, that you and we had Josh from B-Side Cincy on the air, and I got to go out to that event, and holy crap, dude! Now the event in Cincinnati was one day, and I'm going to tell you, it rivaled the bigger events like a Black Hat, a DEF CON. It was freaking awesome. So I know that you've got an event in like October that's going to be in DC, and it's a 2-day event.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you now, you need to be there.
I need him to contact me about the contact information, because I know I had asked that night, and he said, I'll email it to you. So I never heard anything back.
Yeah, no, he brought that up. We talked at the event, and he was just crushed with, this event was their 5-year anniversary, and it was their biggest as far as attendance, the number of
make it look
presenters. Good. Yeah, it was awesome. So
I get it.
So yeah, but he did say he'll be reaching out, so we'll get you. But for everybody else that's listening, look in your city, because the B-Sides events are all over the U.S. They're in Cleveland and all over, a lot of big cities. So even if you're not close to Cincinnati or D.C., if you're around a major metropolitan area, Google it. Look for a B-Sides event in your area, and for crying out loud, go. These things are freaking awesome. And
you want to come down to D.C.?
Yes, yeah, I'm definitely going to have to make plans for us to swing that way for that weekend.
Well, don't worry, man. Pick y'all up from the airport.
There you go. So Josh, if you're listening, and I think you are, thanks again, buddy, for having me out there, and congratulations to you and your team for putting on a kick-ass event. That was awesome. So, anywho, tonight we're talking a little bit about, probably about baselining your systems, and what does that mean? What does it entail? And Jason's going to take that conversation and drive it tonight. So we'll all be sitting back and listening to him. And every now and again, I might throw some wit and wisdom, but probably very little. So, but before that, let's get to one of our sponsors real quick, and that is BitTrust. They've been patiently waiting to get their stuff on our airwaves, and
waiting in the wings.
That's right. And I promised them tonight that they would be there. So give us just a minute here and support our folks at BitTrust, and say thank you to them for supporting Bring Your Own Security Radio. Want to take advantage of the growth of Bitcoin, but you don't know how? Are you looking to add Bitcoin to your retirement account? The crypto world is confusing. How would you even get involved? BitTrust IRA helps you seamlessly and securely add cryptocurrency to your investment portfolio. Their team handles the entire process to make it easy. You can download your free copy of their cryptocurrency IRA Investor's Guide at bitrustira.com/podcast. That's BITTRUSTIRA.com/podcast. Or better yet, give them a call right now, 855-642-8800. That's 855-642-8800, and tell them Bring Your Own Security Radio sent you. All right, and there we are. We are back. I am Dave. He's Jason. Yep. All right, Jason. Let's just take this away. Tell us all about baselining and why we should do it if we haven't done it already.
All right, so let's delineate baseline a little bit, because baseline can be a pretty interchangeable term, if you will. So what I'm talking about is actually secure system baseline. So if you're dealing with imaging and just going through a lot of the cases where this is going to be a good idea for you, especially if you haven't done it already, which will greatly benefit you. So I guess getting down to it is, why would you want to implement a secure baseline? You know, Dave?
Well, what I think I'm going to say is because I
put you on the spot or nothing.
Well, I mean, to me, the obvious answer is I don't know if something's wrong if I don't know what it looks like when it's right.
That's true. That's true. And that can, inconsistency can be a big thing. So, a few of the things that's why you would implement a secure baseline is, one, it's a simple thing that can be done for a relatively low cost and is very effective. All right. So it's an easy sell to management if you were to go this route. As far as something as securing a system, excuse me, I'm bumping my mic here. As far as securing a system, it's going to be one of the easier things you can do. And it's something you'd want to do before you would have somebody else, throw money at a solution for you. So, they think, oh, well, we need this, we need this, we need that. No, start easy, start basic. This is where you should start. Especially if you haven't done this, then it's time to circle back and do it. The second reason is going to be it reduces your attack vectors. So default things like permissions, there's plenty of other pieces in here, so there's a lot of default settings you're going to be dealing with in OS, whether it's straight out of the box or whether you did tweak it a couple times or did a few things and thought, okay, I'm going to call it a day. In a lot of cases, there's some things you might miss. You never know. And it also promotes best practices. So that's getting down to what you were saying. It's eliminating easy mistakes that happen over time. Like you get waves of people that come in and out and leave. These guys that just come into image machines and let's say, oh, we do it through a checklist. Well, certainly you can do it through a checklist, and of course you can enforce a checklist, but it's a human action that can easily be missed. Okay, that's the first thing you got to look at. And I always look at it from the human factor. There's always going to be that person that's going to do it a little differently, and in a lot of cases that's going to be your flaw from systems being put on your network. And one of the other bigger things is it makes you look like you know what you're doing. Which is not a bad thing. It's always good to look like you know what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to do it right now real quick. That way people think I know what I'm doing, and I've got another 2 or 3 months I've got them fooled. So I should do that right now just for that reason alone.
But that's a subject that should be in, the mind of a hacker, man. It's not only vulnerabilities, it's configurations that are just as bad. Default passwords, permissions, to over permission for say some admin accounts. You use a default admin account. The list goes on and on about that, and we can see it, then they can see it too. So the next question is, how would you do this? So I'll give you two examples of what you could use, and that's based on the fact that I have a federal government background. That's where some of this is coming from. So your experience may vary, but there are two tools you could use, and I'll beat up on the names, and beat up on not really using it as a bad-spirited word, but yeah, good-spirited word. DISA is one. So DISA has a STIG, and that's going to be your strategic technical implementation guide. DISA also has a tool. It's called the SCC tool. So SCAP Compliance Checker is what it's called. It used to be called SPAWAR, if I'm not mistaken, and that came out of I think it was DoD or the Navy. I forget which one, but it was originally called SPAWAR. You have SCAP checklists that come with that. There's a lot of federal government folks that love using DISA STIGs, and that's cool, no problem there. It's not the only thing that's out there, and the problem is with policy is, in a lot of cases, you look at different government agencies, they use different things because they're not necessarily mandating something saying you have to use this type of STIG or you have to use this kind of baseline. It's not, because in essence there's always going to be some nuances. So the other one outside of the DISA STIG and the SCC tool is CIS. So CIS has a tool called the SysCat. I like the SysCat quite a bit. It's kind of a two-sided deal. It's like the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. There's a rivalry there, but it's between the people that are actually using it to just say, oh, I'd rather use this. No, I'd rather use that. Either way, if you look at it, configuration is still defined the same. There's no magic configuration on one that you don't see on the other. I mean, there's nothing magic about that. Your common configuration enumeration is the same on both sides. It's a CCE. So your CCEs are part of this, and that's your configuration. If you look at a CVE, that's going to be your common vulnerability enumeration. So with SysCat, you have the tool. That's the tool. You also have the benchmarks. So CIS just basically just refers to them as benchmarks, and they have a very large library. Now, it's not to say that DISA hasn't expanded their library, because they definitely have. I mean, there's a lot there. But now you're getting down to the question of, well, what are we securing? What can we secure? So there's a number of things. Start with an OS. So start with your operating system. You have Windows. So you have workstations, servers, your different flavors. So you have 7, you have 10, you have the different servers, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2012 R2, on and on and on and on. So you have that. Linux, you'll have Red Hat, you'll have Ubuntu, you'll have many different variations of Linux. Apple, you'll also have the Mac OS, Solaris, So I'm trying to think. Solaris. Solaris is at what, 10? AIX. You're going to have networking, STIGs and baselines. Juniper, Cisco, Checkpoint. There's a ton of them out there. There are also ones for the provided OS for things like AWS. So there actually is one for specific to AWS. There's one specific to Azure. There's STIGs for print devices, multifunctional printers, you name it. And it just depends on how it's built. But the cool thing about the way they do these baselines and the way that they do the STIG is, at least with the automated tools. And what I mean by automated tools is these tools are actually a Java-based platform that you just run on the machine, and it actually spits you out a report based on an XML file that actually goes through and checks your configuration and then spits it out at you with a score. So beyond the OS, you also have application, which is another insanely long list. You have things for SQL, MySQL, Tomcat, IIS, Apache, VMware, Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Office, so on and so forth. It's an insane list. Mobile devices. You have Android, you have iOS, which would be your platform for iPads and iPhones. It's just crazy how much is out there. So,
I would say that I don't have any experience with the other ones, but I have used Syscat, and all smart alecky comments aside, it has been an awesome tool as far as I've used it, and had access to the different types of systems that I've run it against.
Right.
We've run it against Palo Alto firewalls and some switches and other things, as well as OSs. So yeah, you're right about it having a lot, and if there is a conversation about one's better than the other, it's probably against people who just have some sort of preference one over the other.
Yeah, the people that are steadfast against one or the other, that's all it comes down to. It's just a matter of taste. Whichever one works for you better.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no inherent better. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And that's kind of how I see it, is if it does the job you're looking for it to do, then it was just right.
And then if you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter which one you use, because you've already made that step to put a baseline out there. So that's the key here. I don't care which one you use, as long as you're able to take those best practices and apply them to your environment. So what we have to do now is get down to a couple of disclaimers here. So there are a few disclaimers. One, okay, these are made for best practices. These are merely suggestions about best practice. One of the big rules you're going to need to know before you start digging into this is you need to know your environment. You need to know your systems, your nuances. What do we heavily use? What do these users do? What do these users do? You got to find out your functionality. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to fit the functionality for your system. If you can't do that and you're going to cause issues, then people are immediately just going to be shy away from things, and it gives a bad name to all of us. If you don't, take and have some knowledge on what you're applying this to, and definitely put a good deal of planning into it. The other thing is, and what you're going to find in both of these tests, is that there are level 1 tests and level 2 tests. You don't want to do level 2 tests. And the reason why I say that is because level 2 tests are made for, they're made for like top secret systems, that type of thing, air gapped, skiff systems. They're not made for common use or something that's not going to brick at you once you give it to a user. So level 1 is going to be your best bet for this, unless you really are doing, top secret systems, which, they do prepare for that. So there is that. And then getting down to the actual how you're doing this. So there's going to be an amount of planning you're going to have to do. And a lot of that planning is going to be a lot of analysis and, reviewing things with stakeholders in your system, people that have to do the work and people that are going to have to maintain these things. If you don't have communication with these folks, then this baseline is dead before it even gets started. Just my opinion, but I've seen it happen.
Yep, you're right. I've seen that too. It's
Yep.
no doubt. It's if one person acts in a vacuum or a bubble, or even a small group of persons are working in that bubble and vacuum, and they don't explain or explore options with other teams or other units of business units, then you're probably asking for pain at some level, whether it be
That's correct.
a
It's just
device
gonna
taking a
backfire on
crap,
you.
or some report taking a bad angle on you or something. But
That's right. So there's also some decision points you have to make within this time. You're going to have to decide, okay, how am I going to implement these configurations? Am I going to do them locally on a system and then basically image it so it's baked into the image? Or am I going to use something else to do the configuration for me? Am I going to use Active Directory? Am I going to use Puppet? Am I going to use some other mechanism to actually put this configuration on a system or maintain the configuration on a system? So my take on this is a bit jaded, and I've kind of stuck with this thought, and I've had arguments with, passionate, debated arguments with system engineers on this. But my take is on this that I would rather, and I speak for so I would rather bake the configuration into the image. And there's a reason why I say that. Baking it into the image, and this is getting back to what I was saying earlier on. So let's say you have a lot of turnaround of admins, and you have this checklist, and somebody's not following this checklist. So let's say part of this checklist is you image the machine, you have the apps deployed to it. Somewhere along the line, it's not joined to the domain, and somewhere somebody's using it on the network. So now you have something that basically is maybe a little better than out of the box. Patched or not, doesn't matter. I have more peace of mind knowing that something's baked in versus something like that happening and then finding it and getting caught with your pants down. Now, if you have an enforcement that all machines are joined to the domain, like say if you were using SCCM, like you were using MDT. So if you're using MDT, you can actually set up an option so it joins the domain automatically. before it's, it's set up and things like that. So I could see that as being something that would compensate for that. But it's a decision point you're going to have to make. But also getting back to what I was saying about running either of these tools. Both of these tools are automated tools. Once you run them, it comes back, you got a score, you got findings. What passed, what failed. You're going to know as soon as you get that report. So the objective of securing the system based on the changes you're going to make, something else has got to come into play, and that's actually working with the engineers, working with the stakeholders, and working with people that are going to have to make some decisions. You're going to have to review. You're going to have to work with these guys to get a proper testing done so that you know the functionality is going to work. That's going to be another important part, is your test bed. When you do these things, you're working in a much structured manner. You're working with the other parties that are involved. This is going to more or less come to the success of doing this, and you'll be able to attest that success. So as far as testing, you have to do them one by one, because there's going to be no one size fits all for this. So when you go through, you're going to have to go through and test your functionality. Even if you had to work with an engineer and you just did a couple of configuration changes at a time and just went back in, we'll try this, we'll try that, does this work, does this open? And you go back and you do it again, you do another wave and another wave and another wave until you feel that that's satisfactory. Don't ever base this on the scores that you see from the tests. That just kind of gives you a good overview of where you stand in the configuration scheme of things. But that doesn't mean that you have to get the highest score necessary because you have to. That's a poor approach. But after stating doing what you can, this is being prudent. So you're being prudent, and you're keeping the functionality of the system. That way, if anybody's using it, they can still use Java. They can still do the things that they do. So what comes into play after that is actually documentation. Once you've done your tests, you've went ahead and reviewed the results, you've went in and you've done your configuration changes, and you're pretty happy, you're pretty satisfied with your outcome. So from there, you have to document things that you did not fix. This is another important step, because you need to document your exceptions, and if possible, this is a highly suggested piece here, come up with justifications of why you couldn't do that and why you have an exception for it. That way, when you have these things documented, it's done. This is not like you're going to have to do this 15 times. You're getting it done. You're doing it once. You set up your justifications. You have things documented. You're good. So that would be an approach I would look at doing this. And some of it may sound ass backwards. There may be a few things that are out of order in here. But in essence, a lot of that information is very important when you're doing, a secure configuration baseline for your images. And going further than that, if you decide to go out further than that, you can also take, for example, and I'll use this as an example, and mainly because it's something I commonly use, Nessus or Security Center. You can take that configuration and actually have it loaded into an audit file that you can actually put in, and then you could schedule it so you do a compliance scan, whether it be monthly or quarterly or whatever. you're going to be able to tell all the systems that you can actually scan. You're going to be able to find out if that configuration is the way it's supposed to be. If it's not, it's an easy thing to change. It's an easy thing to find out what's happening there. And it's just another good way to reach out. It gives you the opportunity to test your effectiveness, on a defined basis. And beyond that, if you want to look at it another way, it's something that you implement with your change management. So it gives you a starting point within your change management program. You have the system, this is your base image, this is your base amount of software. It gives you a starting point for your change management process. If you don't have one available, that's a good starting point for that. And once you do your OS baseline, it can go on and on and on. Then you're dealing with your applications, your SQLs, your databases, your web services, Apache IIS. You can even get into the browsers, Chrome, IE, Firefox, Microsoft Office. It just goes on and on and on. So it's definitely not something you're going to do in a day. You're not going to have it done in 4 hours. Unless you're a very, very small environment, you can get it done very quickly. But if it's a bigger environment, it's not going to come quick. So, be prepared for that and, phase it out. Phase it. That's all you really need to do is just phase this stuff, and you can see just how effective you can be when the project's done. I'll just leave it at that, Dave.
Well, you said a mouthful then.
Maybe.
For those of you just tuning in or maybe haven't joined us midstream, I'm Dave, he's Jason. You're listening to Bring Your Own Security Radio, and tonight Jason's been talking about baselining your systems and what does that mean in general, and then what does it mean particularly, and why would you do it? And if you missed a little bit of the first half, I implore you to go back and listen to it, because he started off with
listen, damn it.
Go back. But Jason really started off with a lot of good whys, and he even wanted to throw some controversy in there because he likes to rile up people who are sysadmins. And but if you don't know why he riled you up,
it's easy.
Yeah, go back and take a listen. So, of all the things that you mentioned so far, Jason, I think my own experiences have been wide-ranging. There was a time when I wouldn't bake something into an image if I was using imaging.
Right.
But then I kind of flipped my own switch and started going the other way. And then more recently, we have been using tools like SCCM and MDT and other stuff that has allowed us to be pretty granular with the machines that get on our systems, or onto our networks, I should say. And
isn't there a Microsoft configuration baseline tool?
Yes, I'm just
I'm
not
trying
entirely,
to think of the acronym.
Yeah, I'm not.
Can't
I'm
think
not,
of it right now.
I'm not entirely convinced. I mean, it's good for Microsoft stuff, but
yeah,
if you get outside of that range, when you start talking about your switches and firewalls and VPN concentrators and duplexers and aggregators and all the other different things that could be in your environment, then the Microsoft tool starts lacking.
And I tell you, man, I am also a little jaded with SCCM a little bit because of the reporting function a little bit. They tend to have a little bit of lag to them. I tend to like things that are just once you're done scanning it, you have it. It's bam, it's right there. Like Nessus will do that for me, and you have tangible evidence right there as soon as it's done. And in some cases, like I said, I've worked with SCCM in the past. It seemed like a good enough example of SCCM for me, and it seemed to I don't know. It seemed to be off a little bit, reporting wise in some cases. But that just may
Yeah.
be my case.
Well,
Somebody
and
could say, "Hey, it's been highly reliable." No, that's great.
yeah. Well, yeah. It's always. I think in the tech world, the disclaimer should always be, your mileage may vary. Check with your vendor. Sort of deal
Yes, that's true.
because you never know what's going to come down the pike at you.
Right.
And you never know what oddball scenario your system is going to encounter, whether it be because you mixed different things into your environment or whatever. But having that reporting is certainly good, and I've seen that with the CIS stuff.
Yeah.
Reporting is pretty awesome. You can edit it down. There's a lot of embedded stuff, but
Mhm.
Again, I've got some limited. I'm not an expert with CIS, but I'm
You
a
don't have to
fairly
be an
experienced
expert.
user.
That's
Yeah,
that's the
but
beautiful thing about it is you don't have to be an expert. Um, even to modify your some of the audit files that you have in the baseline are actually not that tough to do either because it's dealing in XML. So um, to basically do XML is not that tough.
right. Yep. Nope. I agree. It's pretty kick-ass.
And they also do
Once you get
invite
experience
people
with it.
to pitch in and people find flaws and things. They don't expect. I don't think either of these folks expect to be perfect. Who wants to be perfect? Who wants that shit? That's a tough deal, man, to be perfect.
Well, if
I
you're
wouldn't
trying
wish
to
that on
imply that
anybody.
if you're trying to imply that I'm not, you might just want to hold your tongue, sir.
Well, I'm just telling you, perfect is the enemy of good.
Yep. Well, in the IT
You always want
field,
to be good.
yeah, being good is almost the best that you can ask for.
Yes, that's what you want. You don't want to be perfect, that's for sure, because you'll never be perfect.
All right. Well, it is 9:37 in the East. We go until 10 p.m. in the East. Tonight we've been talking quite a bit about baselining, and so even though we weren't going to necessarily go this route, part of tonight was going to be a little bit about Jason and his baselines, and I was going to talk a little bit about a presentation that I gave. But what I'd really like to do is kind of mix in a little bit. So my presentation was basically what a hacker does from the planning stages to the target identification stages to the execution and then a cleanup stage. And I think of all of that, what's relevant for tonight at least is that in those stages, a black hat is normally not looking at. So let me make sure I say this right. So we don't care about your baselines. And again, the caveat here is when I say we, I'm talking about the bad guys, and not Jason and I specific. But the black hats don't care. The baselines are only for your benefit. You being the good guys who are trying to implement systems, keep them up and running, keep them as secure as they can be. Those baselines are for you to be able to identify when somebody else is doing some things they shouldn't be doing. We don't care what you implement. We don't care. The only thing that we, being the black hats, care about is what vulnerabilities can we use against you? What have you not remediated? And there are always going to be instances where you're going to have a known vulnerability or a known risk in your environment that you can't remediate for a wide variety of reasons. I mean, I know businesses and organizations still running Server 2003, still running Windows
Yeah.
XP. They've got
Unfortunately,
devices, that have XP
those are
embedded.
big no-nos.
Yeah, so there are, and these black hats are looking for those. So the best you can do is account for them. So know you've got these vulnerabilities or these risks associated with your environment, and the best you can really do is do things to account for that. Set them off in a DMZ. put some different kind of monitoring on them or something. I mean, there are just different things that you're going to have to do so that somebody's trying to hit those
And
or
I
compromise
partially
those.
agree with you here, but I think one of the things we're kind of missing on that subject is as far as any configurations you can do, I think they all play a part in security system. And if you're dealing with a vulnerability, there's going to be cases where that configuration is going to stop you from getting lateral in a system. There's going to be a number of things, if you do it right, that are going to be stopped, even if you do go, through a vulnerability with
Well,
configuration.
yeah, and
Now,
that's
I'm
true.
not saying it's a major part, but I am saying that it does play a part.
Yeah, and that's true. I guess what I was trying to say about the black hats not caring what you do, it's, if someone has targeted your environment for whatever reason as something that they want to compromise in some way,
Oh
then
yeah,
they are just going to have to deal with the fact that you've implemented X, Y,
yeah.
or Z defensive measures. So,
Whatever means necessary.
right. So when I say they don't care, it's like, well, they're going to recognize that you've got whatever configs or platforms or
Yeah,
whatever that you've set up, and they're just going to have to try to figure out a way to get through them, around them, whatever. Um,
yeah.
so yes, that's what I really meant. And again, all of
Okay.
it is really, all of that is really for the peace of mind of
Mm-hmm.
the company itself or the organization, and its people inside those theoretical walls.
Yeah,
They're
it,
the
it,
ones that
it
care
makes
about what you've
it
put
definitely
together.
makes a challenge. It makes it more challenging uh, with every little layer you can put onto it,
Yeah,
because it
and
always comes down to a layered um, an idea of having layers of security
yep,
on things.
no doubt about it. Yep, and there's you know defense in depth, defensive
Hmm.
layers. They have different terms that people have called it. Um, but you're right. There is the fact that no one thing is going to protect it.
Correct.
No one config is going to be the end all be all. And in some
Correct.
cases, you might have to actually, you know, I have seen and I've implemented myself honeypots, and those are
Mm.
basically servers with fake data that are hardened, but not hardened as much as everything else. That way, you want attackers to think they've compromised a valuable system and that they've gotten into it. And then what you do is put a boatload of monitoring on that thing so that you can see when it is being attacked and or compromised. You'll know the who and the whats, and hopefully the whys and the hows.
Yeah.
But by doing so, you've at least identified, hey, there's intrusion in my network. What can I do to help stop that? And if you make it too easy, an experienced black hat is going to recognize it for what it is. It's, oh, that was too easy. This isn't real, and
Hmm.
they'll move on. Um, so you certainly want it to be a challenge, um, but you don't want it to be as big a challenge as your other servers. So
Yeah,
there's
and the other part
piece
is,
to
I
that.
guess, is that with honeypots and honey nets and things like that, you typically don't see that in a lot of organizations. Where you mainly see it in a lot of cases is you'll see the McAfee's, the Kaspersky's, and Cylance. You'll see those companies using honeypots and honey nets because that's their livelihood.
Yep.
They want to see people attacking them. So I see that, and then dev environments that are experimental and things like that. I can see that. I can see those types of environments, really getting a better benefit out of using honeypots, honey nets.
Yep, I agree. And I also would say that any environment of I wouldn't say any environment of any size. I don't want to say that, but any environment of a substantial nature, and I guess that term substantial is going to be a point of view perspective, but I think that if you truly value, well, that's a wrong way to say that too.
You're
Everybody
talking about like
values
a
it,
high
but
value
yes,
target.
yes, like a true HVT. That's what I was trying to get to with that statement. But yeah, if you're a true HVT of some sort, then you are certainly going to put yourself in a good, a helpful position to help identify attackers by having.
And if
those
you're
types
not,
of
then you're
honeypots.
putting yourself in an enclave. As far as the high value targets go, you're probably assessing them more. If you're not doing things that are going to spoof a attacker, you're doing things that are going to kind of keep them out as much as possible.
Yep. All right, 9:46 in the East. I'm Dave. He's Jason. This is Bring Your Own Security Radio. We want to once again say thank you to BitTrust, one of our newest sponsors. And starting next week, we're going to bring a few other sponsors on board as well. So we want to say thank you to them.
Yes, thank you.
So now I have to look it up, Jason, because I'm bad with last names. But the guest that I want to bring on next week is pretty awesome. And there we go. I couldn't think of his last name to save my life, and I don't even know why. So if you've never heard of Danny Akaki, AKACKI. So
the name sounds familiar.
So that guy. So I actually met him at the event here in Cincinnati, the B-Sides event. He was the keynote here, and a great presenter. My gosh, and his message was pretty on point. This guy, so we should have him for next week. To try to limit this guy to an hour is frankly a disservice to him, but that's what we got.
We're going to do
hour,
it right.
So that's right. But if you don't know who he is, we've tweeted him out. Check out at D Akaki, so DACKACKI. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Now, and I even said it backwards, so try that again, dummy. DAKACKI. There we go. That's his Twitter handle. Check him out. Start following him. He is a follow that you absolutely need to have. And we're going to have him live. So if you want to ask a question, feel free to tweet at us, and we'll make sure that question gets asked. But this guy is just amazing. Let me kind of tell you a little bit about last week. So does anybody know?
Come on, man! Don't get choked up on it, Dave.
It was so I gotta tell you this. Let me back up and say this. When I went to B-Sides last week, I expected an event that would be a local / small regional event that would be great for me to meet other IT people in my area, and I thought that my biggest benefit to going to this thing would be meeting other people to throw ideas off of, right? So that's what I thought. Yeah. What I did not think was going to happen is that I was going to meet people on a national footprint who could just talk intelligently about such a huge range of topics, and that he's actually trying to do something for the people. So one of the things that he is doing, if you got to infosanity.org, this is a guy who put this organization together, and it's all about like OCD, ADHD, but it's targeted to people who are in the IT field, who have compulsions and other issues, and maybe depression or other mental issues, but they're still trying to make it in the IT field. And all of us that's in this field knows that if you're in this field and you don't have a clarity of mind or a focus, or that you can't stay on topic about whatever topic, you're going to suffer, or your organization is going to suffer, because you just aren't going to be able to do the work. And this guy recognized that and did something about it. So what he did was put this infosanity.org together, and it's all about educating and putting people together, whether they just be peers that have the same problem, so that you can just talk and work it out, or connecting you with various professionals at different levels to help you work through it, and maybe not in such a formal setting, but kind of informally. So anyway, Danny is awesome. You guys, I can't wait to have him next week. And of all the things he does, InfoSanity is just one of them. He's got a few other Twitter handles, at DEFCON610. That's right, his own DEFCON group. He started that at Rally Security, RALLY Security, which is the business that he owns. But it's also a podcast, Jason. He has himself and 3 others on his show. So I invited him to come with us, and maybe we'll cross over to their show at a later date. But
okay.
An Improv Hacker. So Improv Hacker
do a crossover show.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is just, I can't wait. I'm so excited to have him on.
Nice.
And again, for all of you people thinking about doing a B-Sides or some other local event, and you're thinking it's not the kind of event for you, man, I beg you to reconsider. I really can't stress it enough how great that event was for me in Cincinnati. So yeah, we'll be coming to you, B-Sides DC. Be on the lookout. I don't know what we're gonna do to you, but if nothing else, we're gonna come and pay attention.
You might show up and hoot and holler a little bit, man.
Shoot, I'm gonna come up and be a fanboy, because even if it is just a local person doing good work, I'm always a fan of anybody who's putting forth the time and effort into this field to do good work. I don't care if they're famous or
man.
not.
That's just I'll be your fan. That's like a lot of the guests that we've had on here, like Doug.
Right.
Doug's all about that, man, and that's it's a lot of the other guys that have been on this show too. They've all been like that, and I think anybody that helps further, that actually furthers the security field, information security field, they all have a place, man.
Yeah.
And I think they all should have a place.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely your fan if you're in this field and you're trying to make a difference somehow.
Absolutely, man.
I'm your man. I'll come fanboy you and have a great time. So so a khaki, but my goal between now and then is to actually spell his last name right on the first try. So if I get through nothing else in the next 7 days, I'm gonna figure out how to say his name right. So.
Well, good luck.
Anyway, yeah, well, there is that. No guarantees.
That's right.
So at least he'll be on the show with us, and he can say his own name if I still keep butchering it. But
yep. See, and you got all that exciting stuff out of you, and you had to hear my boring dribble.
Nope, not at all. Everything everything has to happen in this field. There's so much tediousness and boring in this field that's entirely necessary. And
look at information assurance and people that have to audit.
Yes,
my heart goes out to them on a daily basis.
That's right.
It's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of reading. The fun stuff, is I guess it's whoever it's fun to.
Yeah, you're right. That's something I recently told a young lady, actually, who was just starting to take classes in the cybersecurity world, and she's asking for advice. And it's so hard because this field is so wide ranging, and there's so many.
It is.
There's so many business types that even if I'm in InfoSec in healthcare and you're in government, InfoSec means different things to even you and I.
It does.
Because of
However, there are some commonalities.
There are.
One of those is, and I've had students ask me before as well. Hey, what should I do? What should I do to get a good start? My answer is always start technical.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds pretty generic, but when you really start thinking about it, it's not.
No, I tell everybody that if they want to be in the security field, they need to sit a year on a help desk somewhere. And I say that because a help desk person is going to be such a generalist, because they are going to get all the ridiculous calls from users who don't really know how to ask the right questions. They don't know how to explain their problem. And you have to kind of hear between the words that they say or read between the lines. Yeah, you kind of
have to coax it out mentally.
And
but it's still another good point that that's also where you're going to pick up your troubleshooting skills.
Yep.
That's where you're going to pick up the tie-in of security to the rest of IT, which is a very, very important part. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like, you get a lot of students that go in and then come straight out doing assessments or straight into being an ISSO or a CISO. They go straight from school to that, and I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Because that to sit down and have a conversation with that background versus a background like, say, we all started from a technical aspect. We all started, I rose through the ranks, and I'm pretty sure you did.
Yep.
Well,
and I can tell you, I wouldn't work for somebody that is a college graduate and within a year or two is in a senior level position. If all you did was go to college and work a year or two, and through luck or nepotism or whatever, you landed in a senior level supervisory role, I guarantee you I won't be your staff member, because that I wouldn't respect that you even know half of what you need to know in just that short 2 years. Your college
and there is, yes, to get to the more senior positions, these are people that have a whole lot of background experience, not only in security but in IT as a whole.
Yep.
Which is another important piece.
Yep. Well, we could probably hammer that topic all for a whole freaking show.
Probably could.
All by itself. But I will say this to everyone. We want to say thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being patient. The fact that we were kind of off the air for 3 weeks.
Yes.
And being patient and allowing me to get healed and get back on the air. It's funny how you would think a knee has nothing to do with talking over the air, but
it does when it hurts like hell.
It does. And when the medicines that you take make you so tired and loopy that you're asleep by 7 o'clock and you're supposed to be on the air at 9 o'clock. So again, thankfully I'm past.
You start talking like this and
That's right.
all of a sudden drift off.
That's right. Well, exactly. I may have fallen asleep mid-show. Who knows? But and who knows? Maybe that makes it turn out to be better. Who can tell? But anyway, so thanks you again to everybody. Thanks to Jason for bringing up a great topic tonight and being able to handle the bulk of the commentary. And
no problem.
Next week, Mr. Akaki. So you definitely want to tune in live for him and check him out. Tweet us at BYOS Radio with any questions that you want us to ask him on your behalf. And otherwise, until then, we bid you adieu and good night and so long and all the other good stuff. So, Jason,
Arrivederci.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to Bring Your Own Security Radio. Join us every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. Find us on Facebook and on Twitter at BYOS Radio, or find us on the web at bringyourown.security.net. Safe browsing, everyone!